There's a writer named Michael Bradley in his book titled The Iceman Inheritance. He raises questions about his own white race. He states, why are we like this? Of the aggressive and destructive acts of the Caucasians, Michael Bradley writes, much effort has been expended in attempts to make sense of our own apparently senseless behavior. I propose, he writes, that the white race possesses an atypical level of aggression. What is the definition of atypical? It's an adjective that means unusual, untypical, uncommon, unconventional, unorthodox, irregular, abnormal, anomalous, aberrant, and deviant. It is in the sphere of abnormal violence that we Caucasoids excel among races. Mr. Bradley writes, it is this kind of violence that makes our history appear senseless to other men and senseless and even baffling to ourselves. The Caucasoid, uniquely among the races of mankind, evolved in a glacial or cold environment. He suggests that scarcity of resources and survival of day-to-day cave life is what caused Caucasians to become so aggressive. He writes, this group of men did develop in a narrow zone of life between fire and ice, between the cave fires and the savage cold. These special adaptations had incidental side effects which resulted in an exceptionally aggressive psychology, an extreme expression of the Cronus Complex, and a higher level of psychosexual conflict. What did he mean, Cronus Complex? It is mainly derived from the Greek verb krans. It means to exercise sway, to reign over, to govern, to rule. So the Cronus Complex has to do with one who has this inordinate need to exercise sway, to reign over, to govern, a feeling of entitlement to rule. This is in the nature of the Caucasian people. And this comes back again to the Holy Quran. I'm going to place a ruler in the earth. So if he's going to place him in the earth, he also has to place in this ruler what is called the Cronus Complex. That idea or thought that he is to be the ruler until the coming of God to interfere with his rule. And that's why it's so difficult for white people to submit to any ruler other than himself. Now, psychosexual conflict is attributed to Sigmund Freud, who developed its theory of how sexuality starts from a very young age and develops various fixations. If these stages are not physiologically completed and released, they can be trapped by them, and they may lead to various defense mechanisms to avoid the anxiety from the conflict at that stage. The reason why this is so important, he talks about when you go to look at European history, particularly one of the best examples is a Roman ruler known as Caligula. Their whole worship was in phallic symbols, sex organs, orgies, and the drive of sex. What created this psychosexual drive? When we study the womb, out of which the Caucasian came, he'll gain a better understanding of himself, and we also will gain a better understanding of him and a better understanding of how he has made us like himself.
Because of anthropological reasons, the white race, or what's called Caucasians, although that's not well defined, were more aggressive than other groups of people due to basically psychosexual aggression and ambivalence and confusion. That's what I wrote in '78. And I did a revised version in 2003, I believe. But at about that same time, there were some other new discoveries which had not been made in '78 and were just made in 2002. And by the time I filled myself in on those new discoveries in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, I then got a better handle on what the anthropological reasons for this aggression. And it's not different from Iceman, but it sort of refines it a bit and also gives it a bit more depth because now there's more hard evidence. I said, okay, now what causes all this damned hatred, you know what I mean? I don't understand it. So I devoted my life to trying to understand it in the sense of not just saying, well, it exists, but what causes it? Does it have a scientific cause that I can convince people of? An objective, factual cause. And that's what Iceman was all about. I think there is. And I think it's been, in the last 8 years or so, very much supported by the anthropology that's come out of the Caucasus with regard to Homo habilis. So, but back then, those things hadn't been discovered yet. So, what I did with Iceman was I took it as far back as a group of people called Neanderthals, and that's fine. There's no doubt that a partial one ancestor of the white race are Neanderthals, and there's no doubt that Neanderthals are more aggressive than anybody else because there's almost twice as many violence-caused injuries in Neanderthal bones than any other group of fossil human beings. So there's nothing particularly questionable about that.